Hello. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon,
Dear
sir.
partners.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
okay.
audible.
The next session will start.
Barabar.
This session, Dr. Deepak Kumar Patnaik is presently working as a senior scientist at CSIR Sikri Karaikudi. He has joined the institute in 2012. He has completed MSc from Utkal University, Odisha, and MTech from IIT Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. After completing his PhD in the field of biomaterials from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, he moved to postdoctoral researcher with Professor Tadashi Kokubu at Subu University, Japan during 2006 to 10, and with Professor Masayoshi Fuji at Nagoya Institute of Technology, Japan during 2011 to 12. His research group works on development of porous titanium and titanium alloy based metallic scaffold customized medical implants using 3D metal printing technology, surface modification of 3D printed metallic implants with nanostructured coatings by both chemical and electrochemical approach for better osto integration and in vitro and in vivo study of metallic implants and development of bioactive nanoceramic coated medical devices and hydroxyapatite based bioceramics, etc. for bone tissue engineering applications. He has published more than 80 scientific papers and 6 Indian journals, and he has US patent to his credit. With this brief introductions, now I invite Deepak Kumar Patnaik for his talk. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Angappan, for your kind introduction, and a very good morning to all of you. I hope my slide I have already shared. Everybody is sharing. Can anybody say yes? You are able to see the slide?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We are able to see.
Thank you.
Visible.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
fine.
sir.
Thank you.
We are able to see.
Yeah. So first of all, it is my pleasure to give a presentation to the teachers from KB who are attending this 3 days Jigyasa program, and what I planned actually I will brief about my ongoing research activities, and from yesterday you have been listening various concept of electrochemical technology, how it is being used by various scientists in our institute, and this topic will be a little different flavor for you guys, and I am very sure definitely you will like this topic. Of course, it's today I will not be discussing more electrochemistry, but how I'm going to discuss how this novel 3D printing technology is going to help to develop artificial human bone and a concept to clinic. Basically, as Dr. Angappan has introduced about me, so I am straight away going to the presentation to share my R&D activities in my group. So basically, what I thought I'll be mainly discussing on in the part one. The flow of my presentation will be first I'll be discussing on what we understand by biomaterials and why it is important or why it is required. And the second part there I'll be discussing understanding on 3D printing technology. I'm very sure some of you might be aware of this new concept of 3D printing technology, which is going to be a game-changing technology in near future. And I would like to give a brief introduction about this 3D printing technology and how it is helping me to develop artificial bone implant that is going to be put in human body. And the part 3, actually, basically, I will be discussing on development of various types of bioimplants using 3D printing technology. And another concept I will be introducing during my presentation, how a nanostructured surface over a bioimplant is helping me to develop a biomaterial or a biomedical implant or biomedical material that is going to be fixed in the human body. Basically, since you all are teachers, so I'm very sure you might be knowing, those who are teachers in biology and chemistry, they might be knowing the bone. Basically, if you look into the human skeleton system, we have around 206 bones. And if you look into the detailed composition of a bone, basically it mainly bone is calcium phosphate, or we call it hydroxyapatite. And you can see the chemical formula that I have mentioned here. And if you look into the composition of or constituent of either teeth or bone, so around 60 to 65% is our hydroxyapatite or calcium phosphate, and remaining 25 to 30% will be the collagen or a polymer matrix, and there will be blood vessel and other additional things. So you can see this slide where I have, it is a self-explanatory, and you can see how a bone look like, and you can see outer side of our bone is basically cortical bone, and it means it is a solid bone. And inside, if you look into the bone anatomy, you will find inside is basically cancellous in nature. Cancellous is basically a porous type of bone. So when we want to develop any kind of bone implant, that time we need to think of developing a porous cancellous type of structure, so that it can be used as a bone implant, and it can allows the new bone to form on the surface. I will discuss in detail in subsequent slides, but before I go deep into 3D printing and bone implant, I would like to give a background on understanding on bone, what is a bone. And now already you have seen in this slide, basically, as I said, this is mainly constituent of calcium phosphate or hydroxyapatite. And you can just think how God has created us and how nicely our bone structure is arranged. Although it is a hydroxyapatite, you can see the right hand side top image of the scanning electron microscope image, where the enamel of our teeth enamel, how hydroxyapatite being arranged so that we are getting the maximum strength, and we are able to chew any kind of hard material. We are able to crush it into powder form, and then we are able to take it inside. So, and how the strength, mechanical strength of any dental, you talk about our teeth, or you talk about bone. So if I will ask you to, will you be able to work in your finger bone? That may be difficult, but we are able to do lot of activities, physical activities, running, jumping, and all these things with our leg bone. So you just imagine. So although we have 206 different types of bones, and the strength of each bone is different, and that is why with the leg bone and the alignment of the hydroxyapatite is in such a way, the mechanical strength is very high in our leg bone. That's why we are able to do all kind of physical exercises, and we are able to run and work as much as we wish. So this is because of the alignment of this hydroxyapatite in each bone is different in nature. That's why we are able to do lot of activities depending on what with our leg bone. Similarly, as I said, if I ask you to work with a finger bone, you may not be able to do, because it doesn't have much strength. That is why actually I would like to say here before I start my presentation that every bone has different strength. So while developing any kind of implant or medical devices to replace those damaged or diseased bone, we need to keep in our mind that it should have sufficient strength so that it can I can meet the purpose that for which I am trying to develop the material. Don't be scared with this slide. Suppose if somebody met with an accident, then what will happen? Definitely there will be, if depending on the extent of accident, there will be fracture in the bone. It may be leg bone or hand bone or jaw bone or skull bone, depending on, as I said, extent of nature of accident. So what will happen? Ultimately, you need to go to a hospital. So basically, what generally, when you met with an accident and when you go to a hospital, generally the surgeon or the doctors will be taking a CT scan. So, and all of you might have seen how the CT scan image shows. So from this CT scan image, you can know what is the nature of fracture or extent of fracture. Based on the nature or extent of fracture, then you need to see how to, or doctor has to think how to recover from the fracture. If it is a minor fracture, then doctor may use some kind of implants, or if it is a major fracture, then in that case you need to completely remove those fracture bone, and you have to use a permanently fixation implants. So you might have seen in your family or somewhere, they might have used this bone plates. Basically, when there is a fracture in the bone, then basically doctors use the stainless steel based plates, and they screw it until the fractured bone heal, and then after that, actually after some time, they remove these bone plates once the healing process is over. So as I mentioned, that the artificial bones or implants are basically are two types. Either it can be a permanent fixation implant or a temporary implant. Temporary implant means you need to remove it after the healing process is over. But here in my group, actually we are trying to develop a permanent fixation implant. Permanent fixation implant, for example, like knee replacement or hip replacement or spinal cord injury, or you might have seen a lot of people at the old age walking bending because the spinal cord gets slipped. In that time, actually you need to have a permanent fixation implant that can remain in the body, or that will remain in the body until the patient dies. So it may be depending on what age actually the accident or something happened. So it may be that's why we need to think of an implant that can stay in the body for at least 20 to 30 years. So depending on as I said, depending on the extent of fracture, also we need to think of whether we need to go for a permanent implant, or we should go with a temporary bone plate or implant, so that it can be removed after subsequent healing process is over. That's why whatever implants or medical devices we are going to use in the body, that is basically called a biomaterials. It means a material which is going to experience or going to stay in a biological medium, and we can call those type of materials as biomaterials. So while developing any kind of biomaterials, we need to keep in our mind in these 6 points. Basically, it should be non-toxic. It means it should not release any toxic element to the body, and that should not create a further or subsequent problem, because the concept is you cannot take a stone or a wood or put in our body, because our body should basically accept it, and it should not lead to release any toxic element, or it should not be toxic to the body. So that is the first point. While developing a biomaterials, we need to be very careful. And the second point, it should not be carcinogenic. And third point is it should be non-allergic, and it should have non-inflammatory property. And most important is, whatever material you are developing that is going to be put in the body, it should be biocompatible or body compatible. It means our body or human body should accept those material, and it should not reject it. And most important is it should be biofunctional for its lifetime in host. Suppose I am talking about a permanent fixation implant that is going to stay in my body or in human body for 20 to 30 years. So it should be biofunctional or body functional until the patient die. So while developing any kind of materials, as I mentioned, these are the points we need to always we need to always keep in our mind while developing any material that is going to be used in the human body. So basically, this biomaterials research is a completely an interdisciplinary area where we need basic science expertise along with the engineering background people, along with the medical science, I mean the surgeon. Being a material scientist, we can develop any kind of material, but we do not know how it is going to behave in the human body. The surgeons are the real end user. They are going to put these implants in the body, and then they are going to monitor how it is behaving in the human body for a long period of 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. For example, you take and many of you, some of you might be using some dental implant or dental screw. So if you are using a dental screw, then we need to monitor how the dental implant or dental screw is behaving in the body. And many times, many often you need to go to the doctors who has done the surgery, and they will be doing the X-ray to see how the bone integration is happening over the implant surface. That's why this biomaterial development program is completely an interdisciplinary program where basic science faculties work along with the engineering faculties and the medical professional to develop any kind of implant. As I mentioned, that being a material scientist, I can develop n number of materials, but how it is going to be useful in the end, how it is going to be useful, only the medical practitioner or medical surgeon can suggest me. So accordingly, I can develop material that we are going to finally use in the human body. As I previously discussed, if you want to develop a material, basically a man-made material, so there is we can classify it into either polymer or metals or ceramics. So basically, depending on the what application we are looking for in human body, so polymers, metals, and ceramics are being used as biomaterials. But today I am going to, although I am working on polymers as well as the ceramics, but today I will be mainly focusing on how metallic based biomaterials being developed in our research institute by my research group, and how it is going to be helpful for the common population of the country. And you might be knowing this metallic implants. If somebody met with an accident, generally in the country, stainless steel based implants are very popular or very famous, because depending on the because the cost of the implant is quite low compared to other materials like titanium and titanium based alloys. But recently there is a lot of trend change happening, and in this most of the people are preferring to go for titanium and titanium based alloys, because there are certain limitation or drawbacks stainless steel based implants are having. And as I listed here, stainless steel based implants are basically having low resilience and low mechanical strength, and the most important issue is the chromium toxicity, because this chromium and iron that gets released into the body, it lead to toxicity, and there are some cases happened in the western countries, and because of that, most of the western countries, nobody is using stainless steel based implants. And mainly in India, since depending on the people who can afford, they are going for titanium and titanium based alloys, because of several advantages that I am going to show you in the subsequent slides. And stainless steel based implants are the consumption of these implants are getting less, because a lot of people are able to afford titanium and titanium based alloys. And another thing is there is no antibacterial properties. I will discuss in detail why we need this antibacterial property for while developing or designing any kind of bone implant. So now the question is why we should go for the titanium or titanium based implants. There are several advantages we have in this titanium and titanium based implants, because it has superior mechanical strength, high fracture toughness, good corrosion resistance, and also equally it has good biocompatibility or body compatibility. So But although there are certain advantages titanium and titanium based implants are having, but there are so many disadvantages also we have that needs to be overcome by doing research. So although titanium, as I listed, has superior properties, but it has high modulus, high elastic modulus compared to our cortical bone, and it doesn't have bioactivity. Although you need to keep in your mind, although titanium and titanium alloys, even stainless steel, cobalt, chromium, moly alloy, these materials are biocompatible or body compatible, but they are not bioactive. Bioactive in the sense, the moment you are putting the implant in the body, the new bone should form on the surface of titanium or titanium alloys, and it should directly bond with the implant surface. Then only the then only the implant fixation will be very strong. And then in that case, if somebody met with a secondary, means another accident and or fall down somewhere, this implant will not go and hit with the existing bone. So if it happens, then there will be severe pain. So in that case, actually the objective is, if you want to develop a titanium or titanium based implants for medical application, then it should have bioactivity. So although as I listed here that the titanium based implants doesn't have bioactivity, so I will show in subsequent slides how, using the concept of nanotechnology, we are able to improve the bioactivity of titanium and titanium based alloys, so that it can be useful in the as an artificial implant. And another most important property is this titanium or titanium based alloys, even stainless steel, they do not have any antimicrobial or antibacterial activity. Then why this antibacterial property is very important? Because in our country, if the doctors or the surgeons do not take proper precaution while doing the surgery process, and if bacteria, and if they do not do the proper sterilization before implanting in the human body, if bacteria comes in contact with the implant surface and we put this implant in the body, then it will lead to an infection. And this, because of this bacterial infection, finally it will make a pus formation and implant rejection. And because of this implant rejection is a very common in the country, because the surgery process, if we do not take very proper sterilization, and if you don't put before sterilization, if you do not do the proper sterilization, then infection, bacterial related infection is very commonly happening in the country. And because of this pus formation and the implant rejection, we need to do a secondary surgery. And secondary surgery, as you know, it is a more painful process, because in that process you need to completely remove the implant, and then you have to put another implant, and it also not only a painful process, and it will also become an expensive process for the patient. That's why we need to keep in our mind, while developing a titanium or titanium based or any kind of biocompatible material into the body, then we need to have bioactivity to this surface, so that the bone integration will be more tight, and the implant fixation will be more tight, so that when somebody met with another accident or something, that time there won't be any pain if accident happens. And antimicrobial property is also equally important to avoid the secondary surgery and to avoid the costlier process for the patient. Well, giving this idea of developing the biomaterials, of course, in subsequent slides also I will also discuss. By this time, I hope you already understood what is a biomaterials, what are the properties we require while developing a biomaterial that we are going to put in our body. So now coming to the second part of my presentation, or what is this concept of 3D printing. I think some of my colleagues already gave some presentation. I do not know exactly whether you guys have attended those presentation, or a couple of my scientist colleagues have gave a detailed presentation on 3D printing. So, but those who are new to this concept, I would like to brief this how this 3D printing, or what is this 3D printing, technology and how it is helpful to develop 3D printed metallic implants. So before I go into 3D printing concept, so we need to understand the traditional concept of subtracting manufacturing. Basically, 3D printing is an additive manufacturing process. Compared to this additive manufacturing, we have the traditional concept. Till now it is available, and a lot of people are also using this subtracting manufacturing. Suppose now let us try to understand what is this subtracting manufacturing process. Basically, suppose I want to develop a ball. This is an example where I have shown in this slide. If I want to develop a ball, then I have to generate a 3D model. And this 3D model I can generate using the CNC program. And in that case, if I want to make a ball of X diameter, then much bigger than the X diameter, I have to take a big block, and then I need to carve it, or I need to remove a lot of material and to design the ball which will look like a 3D model. But so in this process, I need to remove lot of material, and then in other way we can say the wastage of material is a large amount of material get wasted in this process of carving or removing the to design a 3D ball. But compared to this subtracting manufacturing process, now let us try to understand what is this additive manufacturing or 3D printing technology. It is comparatively a very new technology where what we have to do, suppose you want to develop the same ball, what you have to do using various design software. You have to, there is CAD, CAM, and so many design softwares are available nowadays. Using this computer design software models, you have to make a ball that of X diameter that you are looking for or you want to build. So again, once you make this 3D model of a ball, then the software can automatically slice this 3D model into several thin slices so that each layer will appear like a 2D model. And you can see the sliced model where each layer of 30 to 50 microns suppose, and you can slice it into several layers so that each layer will appear like a 2D model, and then the machine will build each 2D layer from bottom to top until we generate the 3D model. So in this process,
Sir,
the
your
major
slide is
advantage
not
is
visible.
we can,
Pardon, sir. Sir, your slide is not visible.
in this process you can see there are several advantages
Sir.
we have in this process.
The
Hello,
slide is not
Sir.
visible. We are not able to see the presentation.
Sir.
able to see the slide?
Sir, presentation is not visible.
Just a minute, I am sharing again.
Okay, it is clear.
Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Fine now? Are you able to see?
Yes, sir. Now it
Yes,
is
we are
visible.
able to see.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not know which slide you have not seen. Have you seen this slide?
No, sir.
Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, sir.
No.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. तो हम तो कुछ नहीं रहे.
Okay, fine. So as I was discussing, I will brief again. Basically, I was trying to explain what is the conventional or traditional concept and how the new 3D printing concept is different than the traditional or subtracting manufacturing process. Because I wanted to brief you, there are two concepts, the old or traditional concept of subtracting manufacturing and how it is, how additive manufacturing is different from the subtracting manufacturing. So basically, I wanted to, I was trying to discuss, suppose I want to develop a ball in traditional concept. First, I need to generate a 3D model, and then I need to generate the CNC program, and then I have to, if I want to develop a ball of X diameter, then I need to take a big block, and then I need to carve it, so to remove the material so that I can make the ball of X diameter. In this process, the major disadvantage is I need to remove lot of material. Let's say the material wastage is a lot. Actually, a lot of material is getting wasted. So compared to this concept, 3D printing or additive manufacturing is how it is different. Basically, suppose if I want to make a ball of X diameter, and what I have to do using a design software, because there are so many design softwares like CAD, CAM and other design softwares are available using the computer. We can design a 3D model of the ball of X diameter, and then this ball has been using the software. We can slice this 3D model into several thin layers of several microns, suppose 30 to 40 micron layer, and each layer will appear like a 2D layer. Then if I give when I give the command to the machine, then from each layer, from bottom to top, layer by layer, the manufacturing process will happen until I get the 3D model. The advantage of this process is you can wastage of material or powder will be minimum, or basically metal powder will be minimum, and it can save the time for fabrication of a component. And another major advantage is large number of components you can manufacture at a time, because once you design the 3D model, just give the command, then the 3D printer or metal printer will do its job. And the major advantage is you can design any kind of porous components with any complicated internal geometry. You can design and develop by this additive manufacturing or 3D printing technology compared to your conventional or subtracting manufacturing technology. And this technology can be useful in wide range of materials. Suppose you want to develop a bone implant or bio implant using polymer or ceramics or metals or any composite system, also you can develop using this 3D printing or additive manufacturing technology. It's not necessary that we can develop only for bio implants or bone implants. We can develop any kind of structural application. It may be for aerospace, or it may be automotive, or any structural or strategic application. You can develop any kind of component if you are able to make a design model. Basically, if you look into the history of this additive manufacturing technologies, and this technology started way back in 1985, around 80 to 85 period, where polymer-based additive manufacturing machines were developed, and it started with a stereolithography-based 3D printing technology, and subsequently, depending on the need and requirement of material, the different type of printers started getting developed, and up to 95 there is most of the printers were basically polymer based, and depending on, as I said, need, then ceramic based printers as well as the metal based printers started coming into the market. And as I listed here, how the development in additive manufacturing technologies has been happened since the 1985. And for metal based system, we have this selective laser sintering, selective laser melting, laser engineer net shaping, and recently electron beam melting also people are talking about. So these are basically laser or electron based melting process where metal powder or ceramic powder being sintered or being compacted to develop any kind of structure. It may be a scaffold, or it may be a solid component or a structure. And today basically I will be discussing on how this selective laser melting or a laser based metal melting system is helping me to develop 3D model or 3D bone scaffold, which can be useful as a bio implant or medical device that can be used in human body. Basically, before going deep into this 3D printing, we need to have very strong understanding or sound knowledge on design software. As I said, how good you are in designing a 3D model or any implant or any structure, then your job, most of the 80% of your job is over. So you just give the command and the machine will basically print layer by layer from bottom to top to get the 3D model or 3D structure. That's why, as I mentioned previously, there are so many different type of design softwares are available, like AutoCAD, CATIA, Magic, Cimatron. There are so many different type of softwares. Every day is getting a new softwares are coming, and you can design the 3D model using this type of design softwares. And another parameter, we need to always understand the metal powder that we are going to use, and the property of the metal powder is very crucial while developing this 3D printed any kind of components. So nature of powder, particle size, the powder flowability, these are the points we need to keep in our mind while working on 3D printing. And another very important aspect where we used to do a lot of research is the process parameter optimization for this laser melting process, like laser power, scanning speed, scanning direction, support structure. These are the very important parameters we need to keep in our mind, or we need to play around to develop any kind of 3D model or 3D structure. I will discuss about this process parameter little later, so that you will be able to understand what is this concept and how this 3D printing technology works. Basically, this is a 3D metal printer system that we are having in our institute campus, and this is basically a additive manufacturing system of US M290 model, and which works on laser based system to melt the metal powder and solidify layer by layer to get the 3D model. So, and the working principle, as I mentioned previously, we need to make a 3D model first using the computer or design software, and once we make the 3D model, then the model is sliced into several layers, so that each layer appear like 2D layer. Then the metal powder gets spread over a first layer, and leveling happens. Then basically the laser beam selectively melt the metal powder and solidify it. Then the powder bed will go down, and the fresh new powder will be spreaded over the first melted layer, so that the second layer will be melted over the first layer, and this process will continue until the nth layer or the final layer get built. So that is how actually this 3D printing, it may be metal or polymer or ceramic, all the printers work in the same concept. This is a small video. This is a small video which I am going to run now, so that you can have you can get a more better idea how this 3D printers works. Are you able to see the video?
Sir. Sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is this video running?
No.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Not
No, sir. Not really.
Only static.
Do you not have software in this?
It's in desktop.
No, no, the video is in pen drive.
No, just
Yeah,
copy
yes,
it
yes.
in desktop.
Yeah.
Just copy it in desktop, the video, then we'll share in there.
Now I hope you are able to see the video.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, basically, actually, you can see here, this is the powder bed fusion method where now you can see how the laser beam is scanning my metal powder and solidifying it. So as per my design data, the laser beam is selectively scanning and melting the powder, and you can see this is basically 30 by 30 centimeter square powder bed where depending on the size of or dimension of your sample, you can design in this powder bed, and now you can see how the laser beam mainly scan the metal powder selectively, and now you can see the fresh powder is spreaded, and again you can see how the laser beam is selectively melting the powder and solidifying it over the previous layer. So that is how actually this laser beam selectively completely melts the metal powder and solidify over the previous layer. And as I said previously,
Your voice is not coming, sir.
okay, sorry.
Voice is not coming.
Okay, I will show you the one more time this video. So I hope now it is clear. So you can see, as I mentioned, that first we need to design the 3D model, and once I design, then I just gave the command so that you can see how the laser beam is selectively melted the powder, and now fresh powder is getting spreaded. You can see now fresh metal powder got spreaded, and then again the second layer is being melted over the first layer by the laser beam. You can see in this video. And as I mentioned that I have the powder bed size of 30 by 30 centimeter square, and as you can design your 3D model as per your design data. Basically, this laser beam will selectively melt the powder and solidify it. And you can see how many number of samples I am trying to print for my some component or structural application. And you can see now the second layer is getting melted over the first melted layer, and that is how once the nth layer get printed, finally you can have the 3D model, and you can remove the surrounding powder, and then you can extract, or you can take the 3D component, and you can cut it by wire cutting machine, and you can remove the 3D component. So as I mentioned previously, how you are designing, what kind of your requirement, accordingly if you can design your component and you can develop the component. So in this process, as I mentioned, there is no wastage of material. Very minimum wastage of material will be there compared to your conventional subtracting manufacturing process. Yeah, after seeing this video, I am very sure now you got the information or got the message that how this 3D printing, any kind of 3D printing technology, how it basically works. So once, as I said, once you can design any kind of model, and you can see this is basically a unit cell, and in this unit cell, once you stuck it in X, Y, and Z axis, you can have the 3D model. And using this 3D model, you can design the 3D component of having any kind of metal that you are looking for or you are interested in. So, and here you can see that is we try to develop various type of porous structure with having different porosity, and we are successfully able to make 200 micron pore sizes in a block sample. And here you can see there is a CT scan image we have taken, where you can see that how the channel type pores are uniformly prepared by this 3D metal printing technology or technique. And here you can see that is we have this is the photograph where you can.
Sir, slides show नहीं हो रहा है.
Slides are not visible. Slides visible. Okay. Okay, so you can see you can make any kind of graded structure, functionally graded structure with a different porosity, or you can make cylindrical pores, or you can make pores of large pore size outer side and inner side small pores. So what kind of requirement you have, accordingly you can design your structure using this technology. And you can see here I have shown some of the example of 3D printed scaffolds, and you can see this is a spinal disc. In the lower slide you can see there is a cancellous bone structure, or the dental implants or dental screws we are able to make using this 3D printed 3D metal printer. And this is another classic example where actually basically we have taken the CT image of a lumber, and this lumber we have designed a metallic lumber using titanium metal, and we have also made it porous structure, so that the bone cell or bone integration can be more faster or more better. Another example here, you can see how this bone defect of a mandible bone defect, and this happens because if there is an accident happens and that mandible get damaged or something, you can make a 3D printable mandible, and you can also fix the dental screws or dental implant if you want to have. So you can see this is another example where we are able to make mesh type titanium mandible defect that using this additive manufacturing or 3D printing technology. Here another example where some of our colleagues we try to print this artificial knee structure using titanium powder. And this is another example of cranial implant. Basically, this implant has a lot of demand in the country because in India we have a habit of riding bike without wearing a helmet. The moment if you met with an accident, if you have a head injury, then there will be, since our cranial head skull bone are comparatively softer compared to our leg bone or other bones. So although we may not be able to immediately know there is a fracture happens, but when we'll do the CT scan or scanning, that time we'll be able to know what type of fracture has happened. And because of and you can make this type of 3D printed mesh type cranial implant, and that can be used for the in the skull bone. And as I mentioned previously, this is a very common implant is now getting used or being used in the country for using this 3D printing technology, where you can mimic the implant or you can make a customized implant depending on the nature of the fracture or fracture happened to person once we get the CT scan data. In this process, actually, while developing implant, I am coming back to some of the fundamental studies basically we used to do with our research students. basically when you are trying to develop any kind of 3D printable structures or components, we need to play with the scanning process parameter. And you can see, as you saw in the movie, that this is basically a schematic of my bed size, and how I am doing the scanning of laser power, because basically, as I said, this laser beam selectively melts the metal powder and solidify it. And what type of scanning I am doing, whether I'm making any angle of scanning or the Hatch space. Hatch space basically means the distance between the two laser beam, because you know, when laser falls on the metal powder, it basically melt the powder, and there will be the heating effect of metal, because of the laser power will have up to some up to additional powders where the heat effective zone will be there. So because of that, actually when the metal powder gets melted, some of the surrounding metal powder also will try to get attracted towards the melt pool zone. So I hope you can appreciate what I want to say. So what happens, actually, the distance between the two laser beam is also very crucial while making the 3D printed component having density close to the theoretical density. So objective is always we should develop a 3D printed component that should have density close to theoretical density. There should not be any pores or holes inside, so that the mechanical property or the strength of the material will go down. So this is a very important slide where we used to play with the all type of process parameter, layer thickness, laser power, scanning speed, scanning pattern, so that we can obtain the component of density close to the theoretical density. And this is another fundamental studies where we try to do with the laser power to scan speed, and you can see density of titanium powder is 4.5. So you can see at a certain laser power to scanning speed ratio, you are able to develop a component close to the theoretical density. And also the Hatch space. What is the distance between the two laser power, so that I can have the density close to theoretical density. So from our experiment, we found that if we have 90 micron or overlapping scanning, then we can obtain the density of our titanium component close to the theoretical density. Basically, the process parameter we need to keep in our mind, as I mentioned, when the laser beam is scanning the powder, it will make a completely melted layer, and surrounding there will be lot of incompletely melted particles or powders get attracted toward the melt pool zone. So you can see in this slide where you can see, although I have clearly marked what is the layer thickness that I am printing, and surrounding so much powders are getting attracted towards this. So we need to remove, either we need to remove those powders, or we need to develop a technology so that the layer should be, the unmelted powder should get melted and fused to the surface. Because you know, suppose if you are trying to develop an implant that is going to put in the body, these loosely bonded particles should not be there on the implant surface, because what will happen, these loosely bonded particles will leach out from the implant and will go and deposit in spleen or some other body part, and it will become cancerous. So that's why we need to be very, very careful while developing this type of implant, and we need to do some kind of post treatment to remove this type of powders or unmelted or half melted particles from the 3D printed component. And I will show in a little later how a heat treatment process helps me to remove or to get rid of these loosely bonded particles from the surface. And you can see this is a scanning electron microscope image after the 3D printed components are done. And you can see there are so many loosely bonded particles are adhering to the walls of the as fabricated component. And when we heated the component above 1000 degree in an inert atmosphere, you can see the sintering or bonding of these loosely bonded particles has happened, and it has formed the necks. Nicely formed, the necks are started forming around 1000 degree, and above 1200 or 3300 you can see it has formed nicely. so many micro pockets on inside as well as the outer surface of the 3D printed component. Basically, these type of micro pockets are very much essential for biomedical application, because what happens when the moment you are putting this implant in the body, the cells from the blood, they will start penetrating or going inside the micro pockets, and they will start developing the new bone, or bone cell will start its job forming the new bone inside the micro pockets, so that it will help me to get a permanent or proper fixing of the implant by because of this micro pockets, where the bone cells can go and start making the new bone, and it will start developing towards the outer side, so the implant fixation will be very tight. So basically, this is a metallurgical aspect, because when we are doing the heat treatment, the mechanical property of my titanium or titanium alloys may go down. So you can see, as fabricated samples are having very fine grains, but when you are heating above 1000 degree, the grain size increase, and that might or may affect the mechanical property of the of my 3D printed component. That's why we do a lot of mechanical or engineering aspect studies to find out whether the strength that I am able to develop should have sufficiently high strength, or should have compatible strength to the existing bone, so that the implant fixation and implant can stay in the body. Because you can just imagine or use your common sense. Suppose if I have a very soft material, it doesn't have the strength, then definitely if I am using that material as an implant, it will break in the body, so it will have no use. That's why the strength of the material should have always sufficient, so that it can be useful as implant. And as I mentioned in my initial remark, that we need to keep in our mind that what implant or what application we are, or where we are going to use that implant, which body part we are going to use. Accordingly, we need to design or the structure or component. Here you can see another slide where, interestingly, you can see, because of the heat treatment, we can bond these loosely bonded particles inside the pores, and because of this, it can form the micro pocket. In this type of micro pockets are very much essential for biomedical application, because the tissue integration will be more firm and more strong. And we do a lot of mechanical properties evaluation. Here you can see an example where you can see the as printed sample has 500 to 530 megapascal, because and if you go down and if you increase the heat treatment temperature, the property goes down to 400 MPa. But 400 megapascal is more than enough, because for bone application, maximum 100 megapascal is more than enough. That's why, since 400 is well beyond my strength range, so that's why we can say, even I heated the sample at 1200 or 1300 to avoid this loose particle release, to make it cancerous or something. So if you do the heat treatment, although the strength may go down 100 MPa, but it is well above the mechanical strength of our bone application. But another interesting thing is the modulus or elongation of this material. You can see it goes to 30%. This is basically very much beneficial for bone implant or artificial implant development. And we do a lot of studies on this compressive strength of the material, and we try to compare the strength of 3D printed sample with conventional powder sintering process, and we found that this laser melting technique has superior superior compressive strength compared to the conventional powder sintering process. And this is another example where we try to compare where we are placed when we are trying to make the 3D printed component or structure compared to any of the conventional technology of casting or forged titanium or titanium alloys. And this is another slides where we can see there is we try to make the porous component and try to measure the compressive strength compared to conventional method, and we found that in most of the cases 3D printed or laser melted porous metallic implants or metallic structure has superior mechanical property compared to any of the conventional method. And here an example where we can see this is the basically if you take a cancellous bone, not cancerous, you should not get confused. This is a cancellous bone. Cancellous bone is basically a porous structure, and you can see this because of this porous structure. The you can think of suppose when we are a small kid, our bone structure is small, and when we grow with the time, then our bone also increase, and the bone increase happens because of this cancellous bone having porous structure that basically expand, and accordingly our bone structure expand. So, and you can see once we take the CT scan data of this cancellous bone, and you can make a cancellous bone of metallic structure using this laser melting technique. So generally, once we develop any kind of implant or bone implant, how this implant before going for clinical trial or human trial, we need to use this small animal experiment to confirm that yes, the 3D printed or bone scaffold is non-toxic. And as I shown in my beginning slides, the 6 properties that we are always will be keeping in our mind while developing any kind of implant. That time we need to go for in vivo study or animal experiment. And since some biologists are already in this group, so I will just pass this message that once we there are 2 types of studies. One is the in vitro study and another is the in vivo study when you are trying to develop a biomaterials. Basically, in vitro study is doing the experiment in the laboratory level and trying to understand what exactly how the material is behaving, or even the cell material interaction study in the laboratory level. We can call it the in vitro study. And basically in my group, we work both as well as the in vitro model, in vitro study. And then once we are successful in vitro study up to the cell material interaction, then we go for selective samples for in vivo model in collaboration with veterinary institutes and other institutes where we have the animal model to evaluate the suitability of this material in animal model. Once we get the positive result in the animal model, then we need to go for clinical trials. That is the procedure we need to follow. Basically, in this in vivo study also we do research in stepwise. In this case, first we need to take a small animal like rat, or then we need to go to rabbit and then the dog. And some countries, depending on the countries there are in vivo models are different. Some countries they use monkey as a model, saying that because humans have developed from monkeys, so the mimicking the implant will be more better. That's why some countries they used to do monkey as an animal model, and European countries they use deer or horses as the animal model. So depending on the country, they have the protocol to do the animal study. So that is how actually once we have the rat model, then we need to go for rabbit model, then we have to go for the dog or canine model. That is how actually we need to do a systematic study. And once we get positive result in all the animal experiment that it is not toxic, the biocompatibility is good, bioactivity is good, all the protocols that I have mentioned in my initial remark, and if we get all successful results, then we need to go for the human trial or clinical trial. So this is a lengthy process, but if you want to develop an implant, we need to follow all the protocols. Otherwise, Food and Drug Administration may not allow you to use this implant for directly in the human body. So what happens actually once we develop these implants, or once we develop any kind of 3D printed scaffold, then we put this implant in the animal model, and we found that is because there is you can see white person is basically the it forms the scar tissue, and that scar tissue basically prevents the new bone formation. The red person is basically the new bone. So it has formed a gap. Actually, this is where I was talking about. Although this material is a biocompatible, but it is not bioactive. Bioactive means the new bone formation should happen directly adhering to the metal surface, and metal part is basically looking black color in this image, and because of the scar tissue initially form on the surface, it prevents the new bone formation. That is why actually in my initial slides I was talking how the concept of nanotechnology is helping me to develop biomaterials with a strong osteointegration or bone integration with the implant. And now I am going to introduce another concept of surface modification approaches to develop nanostructured surface layer over the 3D printed metal surface, and how it helps for bone integration you will see in my subsequent slides. Basically what we do, once we develop any kind of metal scaffold, we do various types of surface treatment methods, and you can see these are the very simple chemical treatment method like sodium hydroxide or alkali. If you treat with sodium hydroxide and under SEM, if you see the surface morphology, because of the chemical reaction between the titanium and sodium hydroxide or hydrogen peroxide, and it forms the hydrogen titanate or sodium titanate layer over the surface. It is basically a 1 micron porous layer, and it forms entire surface of your 3D printed implant or any kind of metallic implant. And once you treat with, instead of sodium hydroxide or hydrogen peroxide, if you treat with some strong acid, you can see micro pits are forming on the surface, and this is basically modifying the surface to micro pits on the surface. So and so basically we used to play with a different type of chemical treatment, and we modify the surface, and we try to compare which type of surface is having a better bone integration or biocompatibility or bioactivity on the surface. And in this process, basically in order to provide the antimicrobial activity, we try to decorate or deposit silver nanoparticles over the surface, and the calcium and strontium ions we incorporate in the surface, thinking that because calcium, we are trying to develop a bone implant, so calcium or strontium may accelerate the faster bone formation or osteointegration ability to this metal surface. And once we modify the surface, basically we do an in vitro study to evaluate the bioactivity of the surface, and basically we take a blood plasma concentration in the laboratory by taking the salt solution, salt we add to ultra pure water or distilled water, and we make the simulated body fluid. And there is a concept that if you soak the surface modified sample in the simulated body fluid and it forms calcium phosphate or apatite deposition on the surface, then we can say that the surface is bioactive. Generally, this is a very preliminary understanding that if we are able to form the calcium phosphate or bone on the surface by soaking in body fluid, then we can say the same way if you are taking this material and making an implant and putting in the animal or human body, the same way from the blood it will take the calcium and phosphate and other mineral to deposit the bone, or new bone formation will happen. So this is basically, I can say, it is a preliminary test method to identify that yes, my surface is bioactive, then I should go for the next step of cell material interaction, or I need to go for animal study. That's it. So this is basically, I can say, it is a purely an in vitro preliminary test to, or I should say screening test to see yes, whatever surface modification I have done, it is improving the bioactivity of the surface or the sample. You can see this because of the surface modification, and we try to decorate silver as well as the calcium in this slide. You can see, and the idea of silver, and we try to optimize the silver, because you can also tell me that silver in large excess is always toxic. Yes, we also agree. That's why actually we try to minimize the silver concentration so that it can kill the bacteria, but simultaneously it should not kill the bone cells or cells, because if cells are dead, then the implant has no use, because the patient also may die. So that's why we need to always be very careful while optimizing the silver concentration. As I mentioned, that large excess silver is always toxic in the body. This is an image where you can see the cross-sectional image, where you can see how the porous network structure of 1 micron has grown because of the chemical treatment. And idea is basically because of the porous network structure, the bone cell can grow through the porous network structure, and the implant fixation will be also very tight. And here you can see the transmission electron microscope image, where you can see how the silver nanoparticles of 5 to 10 nanometer nanoparticles are decorated over this surface modified titanium metal. And we have also confirmed this silver presence of silver is in zero oxidation state. Lot of fundamental aspects also we do during the course of our research. And while evaluating the bioactivity of the sample, when we soak the sample in this simulated body fluid or SBF, you can see how the apatite or bone formation started happening within 12 hours of immersing in this body fluid. This indicates that the modification that I am doing to this titanium or titanium alloys after 3D printing is we are able to induce the bioactivity by when we are soaking in the body fluid solution. And you can see after 24 hours, entire surface is covered with the new bone formation, new calcium phosphate or bone formation. You can observe also we have shown here in the transmission electron microscope image. And once, as I mentioned, although silver is good for antibacterial activity, but simultaneously we need to keep in our mind that it should not kill the bone cells. That's why we also do the toxicity study in the bone cells like MG63 osteosarcoma cell lines we take. And you can see, although there is we try to optimize the concentration of calcium and the silver on the surface, and you can see there is no bacteria, all bacteria are dead bacteria. But you can see titanium sample, if you are is not having antibacterial activity, and you can see there are bacteria has grown on the surface. But when we are incorporating the silver, the middle two samples, there is no bacteria. But when you are decreasing the concentration of silver, then you are again finding the bacteria. So interestingly, that's why we optimize the silver and calcium concentration, that it has antibacterial activity as well as it has the bioactivity and biocompatibility. And you can see the lower green color image where the cells, basically the bone cells of MG63 cells are live cells are present on this optimized silver containing calcium modified titanium surface. And you can see this is basically a cancellous bone scaffold, and after this chemical treatment we have modified the entire surface including the pores also. And the advantage of, because since this is a liquid chemical treatment, that basically helps for making this type of porous network structure even inside the pores, so that the bone cell, if it goes inside, and you can see this is the apatite formation or bone formation when we soaked in simulated body fluid, you can see this calcium phosphate nodules have grown over the surface. This gives us an indication that if I make an implant and do this type of surface modification and I go for animal study, it will, in the same mechanism, it will also form the new bone, and that will help for better osteointegration or bone formation, and implant fixation will be more tight or more firmly it will form. So we try to develop different type of surface modification. You can see here also, because of this surface modification, this nanostructure layer of titanium oxide, where you can decorate silver, calcium, strontium, any other element on the surface, and we try to understand the property and how it is behaving. And you can see also we evaluate the bioactivity of this porous scaffold, and some of the condition we are finding that it is not forming the bone, and we try to understand what is the mechanism behind this bone formation happening in some of the condition, and why some of the condition is not forming any bone. And here also we have also done this with using this 3D printed porous scaffold. We try to use this antibacterial activity as well as the cell adhesion studies of a bone cell of MG63 osteosarcoma cell lines, and we can found is we can optimize the silver concentration that can have antibacterial activity, because you can see upper image there is there is an optimum condition I have shown here in the slide. There is no bacteria cells are available, but bone cells are live, and so I think I can confidently say yes, this type of material can be useful in the human body, provided I need to do the animal experiment to confirm that yes, it's not killing the animal during the toxicity study. Although I have done the toxicity study in vitro, then we need to go for the subsequently for animal model experiment to confirm yes, the surface modification is basically helping for killing the bacteria cells. If there is no infection happening in the implant in the animal model, and also it is accelerating the bone formation in the surface of the surface modified titanium metal. And apart from that, we do a lot of research in collaboration with other institute on MSCs or human mesenchymal stem cell interaction over the surface, and we found that these surface modified samples are non-toxic to these MSCs, and I hope human mesenchymal stem cells, this is basically it can MSCs can lead to osteoblast, or it can lead to the bone formation ability of over the implant surface. So these are the work basically we do in collaboration with other institute, biotechnology institute, to understand how the surface modified materials are basically helps for biocompatibility or bioactivity in the cell model. And this is basically a immunostaining of human MSCs, where we have done this adhesion and growth of cells expressing cytoskeletal marker or alpha tubulin, and with a DAPI or the nucleus, you can see in this image. So this basically I want to say that although we modified the surface by different chemical or surface modification techniques, so silver containing sample are also not non-toxic to these MSCs. So silver containing samples can be useful for biomedical or for implant or medical device application. And also we also do a lot of studies on osteogenic differentiation. Osteogenic differentiation means calcium deposit or formation by the MSCs. This basically suggests that the surface has osteogenic differentiation ability. And once we get this in vitro result, satisfactory result, then we go for animal study in collaboration with the veterinary institute and other institute, and where we try to understand that whatever in vitro results we are able to get, and in vivo model the bone formation ability is also we try to record. And we found, you can see previously I was showing the right hand side image, because of the without any surface modification, basically it forms the it forms basically the direct bone formation doesn't happen, but because of the formation of the fibrous tissues. But when we are modified the surface, and when we are using the concept of nanotechnology to modify the surface with a nanostructure layer, there you can see left hand side image, where you can see very directly the bone formation has happened adhering to the implant or metal surface. This basically indicates that the implant fixation will be is very firm, and if we use this surface modification after 3D printing, and this will lead to a tight implant fixation or osseointegration on the surface modified 3D printed titanium sample. Here another classic example, here you can see the surface modified titanium metal, as I said, with a nanostructure layer. Basically the red color is the new bone formation, and you can see without any treatment or surface modification there is very less amount of bone formation has happened, but because of the surface modification it accelerates the osteointegration or bone formation ability in the implant surface. So with this I would like to summarize that yes, 3D printing is a very useful technology to design and develop any kind of customized medical implants with complicated bone structure. And once we get the CT scan data, we can make a replica of fractured or defective bone, because it's not necessary that one should have met with an accident, then only we can go for, because there is a bone cancer is also very common and getting very common in the country also. So with that time, we need to replace the complete cancerous bone, and we need to use a artificial implant or medical device of metallic structure. Depending if you are looking for bone implant application, we need to go for metal structure. So you can make a replica of fractured or defective bone that can be printed using 3D printing, and we can supply it to the surgeon, and surgeon can do the implantation after the proper sterilization. So this means the concept of 3D printing that I am talking about, and you can take it to the clinic by once we get the CT scan data from the surgeon, and you can make the implant mimicking to the shape and size of the patient bone implant, and you can supply it back to the surgeon, and surgeon can put in the body, and the patient can recover from it. So basically, and another concept of titanium nanostructure, because the concept of nanotechnology basically over the 3D printed metallic implant, as explained by various surface modification approach in my presentation, basically can accelerate the osteointegration process for faster bone to implant bonding. So, and always I used to thank all my collaborator and funding support and industry partners who are getting associated with me for this type of research activities, and I always thank all my students who are working with me day and night for developing this type of implant. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. Yeah, any clarification, you can text me message, or otherwise you can ask me, no problem.
Good afternoon, sir. Can I ask you a question, please?
Good
afternoon, sir. May I ask you a question, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
बता देंगे सर, अगर नहीं हुआ होगा तो पता लग जाएगा आपको, मुझे बता देंगे, निकल जाएगी तो प्रिंट निकाल के लगा देंगे। फोन नंबर दे दो जो ऐड करना।
Any one person.
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, I wanted to ask you that when we are putting that bioimplant and you're saying that the bone growth is taking place, so if the bone growth is not regulated, can it have any effect, or it can cause any pain or something, because the cancellous bone, it will be filled with the newly formed bone. So
yes,
that's what my
yes, actually it is. Yeah, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation, that there are two types of implants we always try to develop. One is we do not need bone formation over the implant surface. Like suppose somebody has met with an accident, has a small fracture, and generally they use the bone plate, and bone plate has to be replaced after 1 or 2 months or 3 months. That time actually tight bone fixation over the implant surface is not required, because otherwise the surgeon has to put lot of effort to remove the implant. So but I am talking about implant which is going to stay in the body forever, means for 20 years or 30 years. That time the bone formation is very important, because if there is no bone formation, then the implant will remain loose. So in that case, suppose somebody fell down or suddenly another accident happened, that time that implant will go and hit to the surrounding bone, and there will be a lot of pain. That's why if the surrounding is covered with a new bone, or you just imagine if a new bone surrounded with the implant, and there is no gap between your existing bone and the implant, that time the implant will become very tightly fixed, and even you fall down also, the implant will not go and make another jerk. So that is why, yes, surface modification basically is very important for bridging the gap between the implant and the existing bone. Am I clear to you?
Thank you, sir. But I would just like to clarify one point that once the implant is there and the bone formation is taking place, now after, because this is a lifetime or a long time implant, you're not going to remove it. But in future, if that creates more pressure or something, I mean, the between the implant and the bone, there is no gap. Now the gap is reduced, and further the bone grows, and there is a pressure created. Then will something go wrong with the bioimplant? Is there a possibility?
Yes, that is why if you are talking about a permanent fixation implant, actually the bone formation is very much required. That's why many times, suppose dental implant also, even the dentist, they use some kind of calcium phosphate. They try to fill surrounding the implant so that it will be, the implant will be, has to be tightly fixed. That's as I mentioned already, explained that what application you are looking for, accordingly actually you need to design the implant. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Any other question?
Sir, actually, I typed the question, but I would like to ask why these implants are not rejected by our body as the grafts are rejected.
Yes, that is what actually I was talking. So basically, whatever metals FDA, FDA is basically Food and Drug Administration in US. So they have made a list of metals that can be used as an implant in the body, because based on the compatibility of the implant, like as I mentioned in the beginning remarks, that stainless steel is a very common implant in the country, and now titanium and titanium based alloys are getting popularity because a lot of people are able to afford this implant, and because they are compatible to the body, that's why these implants are listed and can be used as an as an metallic implant. But you are talking about this graft material. There is if graft material, suppose they are taking the material from bone from of our own bone and taking and filling in the defective side, that is okay, because if many times if somebody has a issue or some cancer or something is there, and you taking that type of graft material and putting in another body, so before checking the material whether it has any cancerous part is there or not, then that leads to more severe problem. That's why compared to this, metallic implants are better. And of course, I should not say it also depends on what application you are looking for and where you are going to use. So accordingly, actually, we need to design whether you need to go for a metallic implant or you need to go for a bone graft of a ceramic based, like calcium phosphate based autograft or allograft. Depending on what application you are looking for, accordingly you need to design the material or you need to decide the material. Yes.
Thank you, sir. So we can say that these implants are bioresistant materials.
Yes, that is why, as I said, we need to do all systematic studies before talking about or thinking about a implant to come into the market. And from my experience, actually, it takes 8 to 10 years of clinical data is needed before that FDA will approve this implant to be commercialized or product come into the market. It's not like semiconductor market that today you are developing a CD and tomorrow it is coming into the market, because since this here human ethics is coming, so we need to have a systematic study. First, as I said, we need to have in vitro study in the laboratory model, and once we get the in vitro model like body fluid model, then we need to go for an animal experiment to see that yes, this material is non-toxic and compatible to the animal model. Then we need to go for a clinical trial, and once we have 8 to 10 years of clinical data all together, we need to submit to the Food and Drug Administration. Once they give the clearance, then only you can launch this implant in the market. That's why the moment, since a lot of 3D printing work is now going on, but most of the components are not available in the market. It may be in next 8 to 10 or 5 to 6 years later, you can see this 3D printed implants will become very popular, because a lot of things are under now in clinical stage and in research stage, I should say. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
Excuse me, sir. If the titanium implant is not harming the body, that is, for example, the humerus bone of hand, after fracture it is used, is it necessary to remove it after the bone formation after few years? Or
Not able to hear you properly. Could you please write?
Okay, sir.
Who is coming? Hello. Could you please repeat the question again, because I could not hear you properly?
So if the titanium implant is not harming the body after inserting it or after implanting it in the hand, like for humerus bone, if it is used, the titanium implant, is it necessary to remove it after the bone formation after few years? Or it can remain in the body?
You can write in the chat box.
Okay, sir.
We are not able to clearly hear you.
Ma'am, your voice is not clear.
Any other question?
Sir, artificial lips are also made like this. Sir, artificial lips are also made like this.
Are you talking about artificial limb?
Yes, sir.
Artificial limb.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes, artificial limb also can be, and recently as also some polymer based artificial limb also people have developed. Yes, but I am not getting the proper question from. Could you please write in the chat box so that I can get back to you?
He is asking, sir, whether the implant is going to be there in the body or it has to be removed.
Yeah, 4D printing concept is little different than 3D printing. Basically, fourth axis generally they takes temperature or some temperature and some other property. So yeah, I think Miss Anita Jain question: if the titanium implant is not harming the body, is it necessary to remove? Yeah, it is not. That is what actually I was talking. What type of implant we are looking for? If you are suppose knee replacement or hip replacement, so in that arthritis patient or like that. So in that case, actually you need to have an implant permanently rest to stay. So, so as I explained previously, what application you are looking for, accordingly actually you have to develop an implant. And when you are talking about permanent fixation implant, that time the osseointegration or strong bone formation over the implant surface is very much important compared to a temporary implant.
Okay, sir.
It's echoing.
Yes, artificial limbs, yes, it is possible to develop. So, but already some reports are from Bangalore, some polymer printing companies, they have also developed this artificial limbs. It's not an issue. Only as I mentioned, if you are able to design the limb, then you can print it and you can develop it. So not an issue. But so there are a lot of research is going on in this area, but I am not working in this area, artificial limb development program. Yes. If there is no more question, I thank everybody for listening to And I'm very happy to see the messages that you guys like the presentation, the area of research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now we are break for the lunch. The next session will start 2 p.m. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.